everyone, welcome to The Graded Escape. I'm Kelley.
And I'm Anna.
And today we're on episode 10, which is crazy that we've done 10 episodes so far.
More if you count like the 4-part series.
That's
or
true.
like so true. It's even more than
that. All right. Well, so episode 10, it's a milestone without us really knowing. It's a milestone that we've titled Grieving, the Teacher's Identity, letting go of who we were to become who we are now, which is obviously homeschoolers. So this is a really unique episode in that we're going to talk a lot about the shift that we've made from being former teachers to homeschoolers. So if you are a teacher who is considering homeschooling, you haven't quite decided yet, this might be a really interesting episode for you. Or if you're a former teacher and you're now homeschooling, or if you're just curious, I think that was maybe one of the questions that came up in our question and answer. It was sort of just like, how did you make the switch from being a teacher to a homeschooler? So we're just going to talk honestly about some of the grieving process of like losing your teacher identity, stepping into homeschooling, some of the challenges, those types of things. So if you've ever, been walking through Target in that back to school time and felt a little bit of a pang of the smell of new crayons or something. Yeah.
I have.
Crayola.
I have.
Then this episode's definitely for you.
Yeah. So I thought we were going to start with pretty much just asking that question of, do you miss it? So do you miss it, would you say?
I miss certain parts of it. I think it's different. I mean, when prepping for this episode, I think it's a little bit different because I made a career change. So I'm still sort of doing a little bit of teaching, but in a much different capacity. I think I miss what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the structure and the routine of it, and building my structure and my routine. I really thrive on those types of things. So I think that's part that I maybe miss is designing the routine, seeing, a child who come to you and then have, an enormous amount of success as a result of being in your classroom, those types of things. I don't miss, I was actually just telling a colleague of mine, she was doing the bulletin board, and I know you have different feelings about this. She was doing the bulletin
I like that.
Clinic, and she had the big roll, and she was trying to she's like, oh, that just took me way longer than I thought it was going to. And I'm like, I despised putting together a bulletin board, with the big roll of paper, and I feel like you've got one hand here and one hand, you're trying to
it is. It's
not, So I didn't miss that part of it, but that's probably the part that I miss a little bit. I know you're probably in a little bit of a different thing. So do you miss it?
Yeah, I mean, I do and I don't. Same type of thing, but for me, because I didn't, when I stepped out of it, I stepped out of it. So I don't have any kind of outside position right now where I'm having any kind of peer collaboration or sort of that that stimulating conversation sometimes about kids and growth and you're still getting some of that, still being in your field a bit, even though it's not teaching in a school. But so I definitely have moments like that, or even the ability to gauge, success. Say you have a peer review, or you have, your
you're
and you get to kind of get some of that kind of feedback from parents, that are really enjoying you being their child's teacher, some of that kind of stuff. So you sort of get to see the labor that you're putting in sometimes, even though there are years when you maybe don't feel it that way. There are definitely years I can think back on where I felt a lot of that, kind of love from either parents or just, my colleagues, and it being kind of a nice that piece of it I do miss, because when you're homeschooling and you're home with your own kids, it's not you're being told, good job.
Right.
Whatever, or you're really excited, you did something and it worked really well, and unless you've got a mom friend that you can tell a teacher mom friend, because even a regular mom friend might just not really okay. Right. But a teacher, I always think that's kind of nice about having my mother, who's a former teacher. I could spin something to her, guess what? I found this really fun game and I tweaked it this way, and then I did it with my son Owen, and he loved it because it was the letter sounds, and she'll be she'll get excited about it. Just you have that idea. I would say that I definitely, the first couple of years, that end of summer, beginning of fall, I was great. I was so excited and happy to not go back, but at the same time, I couldn't help but the back to school feeling, walking into a Target or I don't know, anything really, and just seeing the markers and little fun things that I might have grabbed to make a goodie bag for my kids the first day back to school or something. I don't know, just those the revving up, the getting back into. I always enjoyed, kind of getting my classroom space ready. Although again, not so much once I had kids. That was more of like a single need teacher type of thing. So that for me, I would, I don't think it ever, it's never lost on me why I left, the position to homeschool, but I would say the most things that I miss, and maybe I get this if I did some other work outside the home, but is that kind of, that peer collaboration, the camaraderie of other teachers, and being able to celebrate some of your successes with you, or, tracking kids' progress and having that be, and, of course, the years when you think back on classes you had that were really special. That you will always remember, and, that kind of a thing. So I think there's a lot of that, but I definitely miss as well. This kind of goes into the next thing, the point, but about, for me, teaching was definitely I'm a teacher. That was a big piece of my identity, which is sort of, we were going to talk about next. And I do miss that a bit because, when people ask you what you do, I'll say like, well, I was a teacher, now I homeschool. Yeah. And I am still a teacher, but it's a homeschooling teacher is not the same. And so I think I miss sometimes that, it's
recognition,
or the identity of you being a teacher. It's like, but you are still a teacher,
right. No, but there is something. So for me, when looking at that one, like, not so much the pride in saying I'm a teacher, but like the general public's understanding of what a teacher is. So I'll say like, people will ask me like, what do you, and I'll say, oh, I work part-time. Most of the time I'll say like, oh, I homeschool, or we homeschool if it comes up, and I, work part-time. I'm a behavior analyst, right? And I always have to follow it up, right? Like, I always say something like, I'm a behavior analyst. I, work with kids that have a diagnosis of autism, designing their treatment plans, and that kind of helps them. But if you just say I'm a behavior analyst, a large portion of the community, like, I don't even think my parents even still understand what it is that I do. Like, they know I work with kids, but like, I think my dad probably will still refer to me as a teacher. And it's like, I'm not a teacher necessarily anymore. So I think that's one of the things that like I miss, is that when I was a teacher, I would just say like, oh, I'm a teacher, and people would be like, oh wow, like, oh, that's such a hard job, like, good for you, da 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 da. Or like, even this last trip that we went on, we were at some like show or something, and they were like, oh, first we want to like really recognize those special people in the audience. So if you're like, a veteran, or like actively serving, or if you are like in a first responder, or you're, I don't remember what the other one was, but then it was like, and finally, like, we really need to thank this group of people because we're all here today because of like a love, like, they were like, and teachers. Yeah. And like the teachers stood up. And first of all, I was thinking, no, because and Grace was like, Mom, you used to be, I was like, yeah, I used to be. Yeah. I'm not anymore. Where do I fall in this like gray area? And then I also had the thought of like, it is mid-January. What are these teachers doing? I was like, that's true. Maybe they're all taking. Oh, that's funny. That is funny. That many. Yeah. But it was still interesting. I was like, right, what are they doing? Are you retired? Are you? Yeah, no, I think that's part, that like recognition that like almost every single person that lives in this has an idea of a frame of reference. Yeah. When you say that, I'm a teacher. Yeah. So that's funny about the boat. That's funny. I think too that's something I kind of miss too, is just there's an ease to when you teach the same grade. I'm finding that now the longer I'm in it, and why I feel like I need to tweak my approach at times with my kids is just because you become, when you teach kindergarten for 10 years or third grade for 12 years, or like, you become really good at that. Not only like understanding that particular age group, but the curriculum you're working with. Even if the curriculum changes, you still have a sense of the benchmarks or the milestones that your students are supposed to hit. Over the years, you can gather materials. You do a big insect unit every year. So guess what? Like, by the fourth time you're doing it, not only are you probably doing it really well because you've done it three prior times, but you've got, manipulatives, and you've got a reading piece that you now added in, and you've got a field trip now that you've got, like, you really, it becomes, and so I remember that, because third grade was the spot that I was in the longest and probably enjoyed the most, to be honest, out of all the grades that I've taught. I think third grade really was the sweet spot for me. And I just, I think about, year one prior to like year six or whatever. And it was like, and certain things that had just evolved, and I had just felt like I got really good at. And it was nice because now with homeschooling, even though we are former teachers, it's still, they're growing. You just do one thing and you're like, okay, now I'm moving on. And for me, I used to really like pulling out the boxes of like, okay, this is my
I don't know, like a book study on Tiger Rising, and I'd have like a whole, by Kate DiCamillo, I'd have a whole box of like, I don't know, either puppets I would use with it. I have the books, I'd have some, lessons with it. I'd have, like the board game thing that I would do at the end of it. I would have, like some online, things saved, videos of the author. Like I would just have a whole thing, and I'd be excited to like do it again. And now sometimes when I plan something, like we've been doing this artist study with the kids lately, and so it's like I'll put all this. We just did Da Vinci, and so I was, I'm thinking of like we made this poster and we did this thing. Anyway, it's all over. I'm sort of like, now it's over,
right?
And like, do I save it? It's not like I'm doing it next year with my next grade. What I mean? I'm not. I mean, again, if you have like 10 kids and you're repeating certain things, I guess there is some things I guess you could save, but generally I think about that always comes up. I'm like, I want to, my idea is to save it because I'm like, well, next time I do it, I'll be able to pull it out and I'm like, but there's no guarantee you're going to do this again. Yeah. And so sometimes it feels like putting all that effort into those activities is kind of fruitless because you're just doing it once. Whereas like when you're in the classroom, you're doing it year after year and building upon it and making it really fresh. Or I think even certain lessons I've done where I'm like, oh, what if I do that again? I would start with this or I change it. Well, you don't know you're going to do it again.
Yeah, right.
So that to me happens often, and it's kind of like a little pang, like a little... well, I miss that. I miss being able to repeat something and making it better the next year. Or something like that.
No, I get that. I think as a special ed teacher, I don't know that I was really in, like when I was non-public, I was in like the mid-range, then I went down to like kindergarten, then I swapped and went up to like 6th through 8th grade.
Yeah.
But like in the non-public setting, I mean, like I think I've said before, like the priority was just keeping those kids safe. It wasn't really necessarily academic content.
Right.
There was that piece, but that wasn't the main priority. The goal was to get them stable enough to then go back into their district and access the curriculum. Sort of like a weird spot to be in. I liked some of the flexibility in that to be able to like plan and pull, but there was no guarantee that I was going to be able to use the same stuff again because it was a little bit more individualized to that cohort that I had. Like there was one year that these kids, they used to do like a free write or something when they came in, and they kept writing about like World War II and the Nazis because they all played like what's that game?
Like a video game?
Yeah, the video game. Call of Duty, I think is what it's called. So they all played that, right? And they came in and they kind of had this like glamorous idea of like, oh, the Nazis, and I was like, I think we maybe need to like do a little like So we did end up doing like kind of a little unit for like history around, World War II and that kind of stuff to sort of help change that perception a little bit. But I don't necessarily think I would do that the next year with the other kids coming up. And then you've got kids that are leaving or kids that are coming in. They're there for, a 60-day placement. And then sometimes they leave, sometimes they stay. And then going to Fall River, even though I had my own room and it was 4th and 5th grade sub-separate, again, the profile of the kids coming up, and then depending on the makeup, like the first year I did it, it was like, okay, we're gonna follow the 4th grade curriculum because I only had 2 5th graders, and like so the majority of the class did 4th grade. Then those 2 5th graders, I think I had them do 5th grade a little bit with like one of my paras, but then the next year I had the majority of 5th graders plus some 4th graders, and I was like, how am I doing this? So then I ended up having to like mix, like go through the 4th grade like stories and the 5th grade stories and like match them up based on like common themes and like change. They always used to do like question of the week and like big idea. And so I had to kind of like, I remember sitting with both of the like teacher manuals and trying to figure out like hodgepodge it together. But then it didn't always match up with the benchmark and whatever. But anyway, so it was different in that like I don't know that I ever really got to reuse anything good. Or like if I did it, it was sort of like, okay, maybe I'll save it, and then the profile of the other kids just didn't match up. So I think special ed's a little different. I do remember feeling a little bit envious of some of the like teachers that typically taught like, oh, they were 5th grade science, and I remember thinking like, I would love to teach 5th grade science. Like that's all you do. You just teach 5th grade science, and like you have 3 classes, and you do the same. Or like 5th grade, like you get really good. And like, you have to individualize it somewhat and change it. That's what makes you a good teacher. But like the poor, and just knowing and being better able to make those decisions because you're so well versed in what it is that they're supposed to know. You know what the end goal is, and so you can definitely differentiate it. Where I thought I was doing a lot of like fly by the seat of my pants.
Yeah. No, I would imagine in the area that you were in within the school system, you'd have to. I think lots of teachers do that as it is, and that's even when they're in the same age group with sort of run-of-the-mill, students. And that's why I think it kind of makes, like we titled the next part, the like unique grief of homeschooling teachers, is that it's different than leaving another profession to homeschool, I think, because it's like you're still teaching, but you're not a teacher, you're still really linked to it in a lot of ways, but yet, you're not having that peer collaboration or that public, recognition, or even feeling like an expert anymore on things, because, you're not, again, if you do so many years in a certain classroom, you do build up that feeling of confidence in a lot of what you're doing and saying, and the age group you're working with, and so now that's kind of like out the window, and in some ways, and so I think it puts you in, like it's a unique, I think, experience going from teacher to homeschooler, right, because you're still.
I think it's also like a unique grief too, because you go from like teaching like other kids to teaching your own kids. It's like, even I'll make the joke all the time as like a behavior analyst, like doing sort of like doing ABA with like other people's kids. It's significantly easier than trying to implement ABA with my own kids. And you feel like you don't have any idea what you're doing when it comes to your own kids. I mean, we were just talking about like just like writing, or if I had, or like math instruction, and being like, well, if I was in the classroom, I would do this, or I'd do that, or I'd seek help, and I'd go in and I'd go in and observe and check that. But now you're sort of just like on an island, being like, this is going well, and like, why aren't you understanding this? Like, I am a teacher, and I'm a former teacher, and I know what I'm doing. Like,
no, I think that it's. I always used to get the message, like, the teaching your own kids, like from teachers I worked with who had kids, in the same school or whatever, that it was really hard and like miserable and not a fun experience. And I remember I had a colleague, the fourth grade teacher. I had her daughter in third grade, so she was going to have her again. She was going to have her in fourth grade. And kind of the nerves with it. Thankfully, her daughter was an unbelievably, like, she was a good student. She was, kind to friends. She was just kind of a, very average kid, and didn't cause any. I still think it was hard at times for her as to have her in her own class. She was a kid. I had Leo in my own nursery class, which was kind of how it just had to be, unfortunately. And it did. The days he was there with me were more stressful, just because there's no denying your own child is in front of you. And so I think it's definitely hard to teach your own kids in a classroom setting. And so then having just your own kids at home, it's so different. Or even sometimes the patience you have for like a group of kids, because they're not your kids, and so and you very, very much feel like you're in teacher mode. Like, you go there, like even like the way you dress, or being like you're on there in a different way. And when you're homeschooling, if you're still like in your pajamas, sipping your coffee, trying to teach them this math lesson, and they're not getting it, it's like. It's just a different hysteria or like lack of patience you have. And that's why like I've honestly started to play around with, like, we don't have a super structured style of homeschooling at the moment, although that could change because I'm flexible with how I do things, and I'm always trying on different things. But I have found like that days, if I have a kind of routine with myself in the morning where I have coffee and read or whatever, and the kids have breakfast or something, but if I do like just get dressed before I do homeschooling, like just change, that there's a little bit of a different, I don't know, oomph, or to my thing, or just because it's like, it's so easy to, because you are home, for a lot of these lessons, unless you get, that's why some moms I think are so successful getting up and going to the library, which I know, we have friends that do that, because it's like, you're just not doing it in your home space, because sometimes it can just seem very, I don't know, you're just not as on in the same way, or even like, if you have like, there's been days I've had like a little cold or something, and I'm sort of like, I'm not going to do it. It's like, no, you'd be going to work, if you were doing like, you know what I mean? Like, this is your, like, do it. And I know it's nice that you homeschool and it's flexible, so that, you have that, but still sometimes that flexibility can, if you're not like a dedicated or somewhat regimented person with a schedule, like that could probably be really hard. I mean, you and I are both kind of like schedule oriented people. We like our routine, and we like to check things off of, the list and stuff. But if you weren't like that, I could see that, being a teacher, getting up and out in your classroom space, probably another reason why some homeschoolers really like to have a separate classroom space.
Yeah, right.
And others, it's fine to do it in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's such a preference. But I do think it is a unique experience going from a teacher in the classroom to a homeschooling. I think you grieve it in a different way. I think it's a different transition, and I definitely think it's unique.
I mean, I do think too, like, there's some grief, especially if you're going to like put a pause in either like a career or work in general to homeschool. There is grief that goes along with it. I mean, even this was before like I decided to homeschool. I mean, my kids were small. Like, I remember, I mean, they were probably like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months old, and I was, home like by myself with them, and I think I was like dusting or something, and I was texting with my brother, who's a large animal vet up in Vermont, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm just like going to the airport to like get on a plane to go to like a big conference or whatever," and I'm like, "Sweet, I'm dusting." That's like, but this, and I felt like that grief of, okay, who am I now? Like, what am I contributing? Like, I worked so hard for all this. And I think that's the other piece of it too. Like, in any career, but because we're specifically talking about teaching, you put so much into it, so much love and so much care, and then to not have that anymore, there is like a sense of loss to a certain extent. So if anybody's out there, and you are really like, you're new to homeschooling, or you're thinking about it, or, and you really have decided that this is an option, it's going to mean like maybe not going back to work and that kind of thing, just know that like the grief is definitely a part of it, and maybe just changing, I mean, we talked about it, I think, in one of the episodes, changing your perception of like how you're contributing, and I know we're going to talk about that too, like focusing on what happens after the grief, but just really trying to highlight those positive
it doesn't mean that you made a mistake just because you're feeling
right, exactly.
It's probably, but that's true about any profession you walk out of, to then be home with your kids and homeschooling, even if you have to take a step back, so you're not doing it to the same degree you were. I think that, and I think I still struggle with that for sure, because there's things that I'm always trying little avenues of like, well, maybe I could try this for tutoring or this or whatever, and then it never ends up working out with my schedule and my husband's schedule and the kids, and it doesn't, and then I get kind of sucked back into like, well, that's because, okay, let it go, focus on what you need to focus on again. But it's like this intrinsic sort of
so I mean, not to get like so down the rabbit hole, but it's also sort of just like the culture of where we live. It's just like your value, unfortunately, comes from like your job, which I think really lands hard with teachers. I think that's one of the things that I am really grateful about the position that I'm in now. It's such a stark contrast from when I was teaching, right? It's like when you're in a teacher, you show up. Like, you get the summer off, so you are here, these 180 days. Like, if you're super, super sick, okay, take a sick day, but you better have a note. You better not be out for too long. Heaven forbid you try to take, like, you get what, like 2 personal days or something like that, like, heaven forbid you try to save a little money and not go on a trip during a school vacation, like so I think that culturally the expectation is that your value comes from your career and money and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of thinking about it a little bit differently. But anyway, so we could kind of like turn the page on that a little bit,
and try to focus on there are some things though, and it's definitely helped me to focus on these next few pieces to when I think about who am I now, and that the skills that went into being a teacher, some of the skills that I honed and worked on and practiced and got good at, are definitely still things that play into my homeschooling setup as it is, which is we're like lesson design, child development insight, patience under pressure, seeing learning styles clearly, stuff like, and I'm sure there's more, but those are just 4 that I know I go back to and have said, and I've said in previous episodes too, just like being able to design lessons on the fly or be really quick to change things around, because it works. I know there's definitely a confidence when it comes to like, this is normal for this age group, this all their or I was going to say that I know that there's definitely a piece of mind that I have, like when it comes to like, we're sick for 2 weeks, we don't do any schoolwork, I'm not freaking out. I might be thinking like, okay, it's too bad.
Right,
but like, I know that kids they're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
They don't learn very well when they're being forced to sit in a classroom with a runny nose and a headache and trying to focus on schoolwork anyway. Or like, they're not progressing or getting this at a certain pace. Okay, let's redesign how we're doing it. Like those types of things that just come naturally to me because of my training, I'm super thankful for. And so I do think that helps me be a better, or have more confidence in sometimes what I'm doing. And I guess that's the part that I would try to share with like other homeschooling mom friends who don't have the teaching background. If they're struggling, like, oh, we've been on, short vowels for like 3 months and they're not getting it. And that type of thing. I would love to be able to like share some of, what I would, say to do with my own kids with them because they don't have that type of background.
Right.
So for that, it can be helpful. So try to focus on that.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, like who I am now, we talked a lot about like the lack of peer support and like being able to kind of collaborate or commiserate. Just the importance of really developing like a homeschool community of, moms that maybe they're not former teachers, but they still know that like, yeah, it's hard to teach your own kids or like, oh man, the patience thing. I mean, we were just talking earlier about like, some of the, or like complaining that comes up.
Yeah.
And like you say something like, okay, I'm glad it's not just me.
Right.
Just making sure, having that community,
and that is hard because like when you think about it, when you think about it, like one, it takes a while sometimes to build that community.
Yeah.
And then two, it's sort of like, even though you have that community, it's not quite, you're not going to work every single day seeing those people.
Right.
And so, like that's why, but it's nice when you have mom friends that are also like committed to getting together like once a week or twice a week or whatever, because it's like, because they obviously need it too.
Yeah.
But it's also, you want the kids to play and that's great and everything. But being able to, share stuff, talk about things, commiserate or celebrate, if you've gotten to a certain thing, even like sharing pictures of like your kids' work, like this has been so hard, look at the sentence they made or whatever, like it can feel really good because you to do that all by yourself. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that are fine doing that, but I know for me, like I would really struggle if I didn't have someone I could send, look at this fun math thing I found on Teachers Pay Teachers and be, oh, that's a great idea, I'm going to do it too. Or I don't know, just it's nice to have that. In isolation, I think it would be even more challenging. So,
for sure.
Do that. But I mean, a lot does. I don't know how long. I don't know. I do remember when I officially had the phone call, the last teaching position I held, where I said I'm not returning. This is me quitting. This is me leaving. Crying like profusely for like 20 minutes after. And I can remember my husband kind of not thinking it was funny. It wasn't funny, but trying to like point out that I'd been very unhappy in not only the school I was at, the position I was in, but just sort of like how we were running things as a household and as a family for a while. And he was like, I'm sure every like positive memory, like every student smile or every, like most magical teaching moment is what's running through your head right now. But as a whole, this was not working for us or you, these last whatever. And so, I definitely had to check myself was how much was I glorifying, like putting all those just most amazing moments into one little compilation. And this was like, no, but that was what teaching was. Yes and no.
Yeah.
And so me stepping out of that, I wouldn't say I grieve it anymore. I really don't think I do. But I do struggle with sometimes that loneliness or wanting more of a collaboration or peer support because you are doing it alone and there are weeks like we've recently experienced where like families you're close with are all getting sick at different times and just because you're better, well guess what, now they're all sick or just the weather stinks and nobody's house is available for whatever reason so you can't get together
or it's school vacation week
can't go anywhere and meet up and it's just like so whereas when you have a school you just go to and get up and go to every day there's an ease to it in one way with that I would say that but to make the list of and we've done episodes or I think or alluded to talking about just the positive things and I know for me probably one of the most aside from some of those things like the really getting to be connected to your kids having all that time back with them I do think of my mornings as because I know how much I rushed in the morning as a teacher trying to get out the door and get going at that early time especially with kids and I would just say that's probably at the top of my list of things that like once I kind of got past the grief of things and started to see, I love being present in the day and the mornings in particular. But like, do you remember like being, I don't know, say you did take a personal day and you're like, go to the market or something and you're like seeing everybody around and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what it's like.
The world. Yeah.
Such long hours during, and it's 5 days a week. And it's not like you run out for a lunch break with your colleagues.
Right,
like, you're there, like either on duty or like eating in the teacher's lounge or eating in your classroom quick.
Yeah. Like, the world exists.
The world, right.
What jobs do you have?
I know. It's like, I can remember always feeling like that. And I think for like a good few months after I left and I know that we have the summers off, but that's different. Summers are just a different vibe.
Different, right? It was all the teachers have the summer.
Yeah,
it's just different.
So it took a while for me to get used to that, like not up and out in the morning and getting to like sit and enjoy the morning. I've always loved mornings, not early mornings. I'm not like an early morning person, but I do love the morning time when the sun's coming up and it's bright, and I've always loved that. And a lot of that I can just, for years and years, it's like, okay, that's when you were doing reading in the classroom, like, that's
right.
But I can remember being like out in the world the first few months after, and like, gosh, I didn't have to fit in, not that you don't have tight schedules and for other things and time, I can't fit this in or whatever. It's just different. Like, you don't have to go to the market on a Saturday morning if you don't want to. You can go on a Wednesday morning and work it into your schedule if it allows, or there's just different things. And I remember feeling like I'm part of the world again. Which also got me, and not to go down this rabbit hole, but it got me thinking about like kids and how not a part of the world. If teachers feel that way, like how the heck do kids feel, because they're in the same confines for however many, whatever, that's another rabbit hole, but it got me thinking about that a little bit. But that's something I definitely, once I got past kind of some sadness, I was like, I really do appreciate, I feel like a part of the world more, and I can appreciate times of day more, and things that I was just so rushed with in the profession I couldn't be a part of. That's something very happy to have.
I think too, for me, it's just about like this sort of like sacrifice, or like, okay, I'm not a teacher. I mean, I guess for me it's a little bit different because I do still work, but like I'm making this choice and I'm to give my kids this different experience, right? And like to really hold on to like how lucky we are to be able to give our kids a different experience in school, with their school, and to access the world in a different way. It makes me sad in the morning when I'm getting up to walk Champ and it's 6:30 and like the guy's out leaving his kid at the bus stop. Now she's older, right? So that's like middle school, but still. And there's a little boy that's like a year younger than Owen and Grace, and he gets on the bus at 7:45. And like sometimes we're just leaving because we have to like go to work for staff meeting, or we're just up. We would like, when we were taking Champ like out into the world for his walk and not just out in the street, we'd be leaving around that time. I'm like, oh man, he's getting on the bus. Like, man, it's early. And then, we have a whole day, and then we come home and it's, 3:45, and the dad's right back there to get him off the bus. And I'm like, man, he has been at school this whole time. Like, and I do point it out to the kids. They're just like, hey, like you'd be just getting off the bus right now. Like, think about the whole day that you have. Not that I'm trying to like make them feel, I don't know, guilty. I don't know. I just but like,
point out that we have a different lifestyle that you're very fortunate to have, and I think that sometimes if we're driving in the car and it's like 4:30 or whatever, because that's honestly when we would be getting home if we were lucky, because where I was working was far away, hit traffic. It was a private school, so the day went on longer. Dismissal wasn't till like 3:20. And then you get dismissal, then you got to drive home. So I say if I got home before 5, I was lucky. And I, at the time, was dragging my 3-year-old Leo, my baby Owie was here at the house. But sometimes if we're in the car, it happens to be that time of day, like, and especially winter.
Oh,
it's
winter,
dark.
It's dark.
And where, we would leave the house and it's dark. We get back and it was dark. It was like the only times were the weekend when I'd see like the light during the winter sometimes. Like that's how bad it was. And I was like, that's not
normal. You're trying to cram everything into the weekend, right?
Yeah. Like, and then the kids go back to school tired on Monday. But it's something about if I'm in the car with them, especially in the winter time, and it's like that 4 to 5 time, the sun setting, I think like this is when I'd be driving home with you, and I wouldn't have seen you this whole day, and it hits me in like a wow, how much would that sting? Stink. Yeah. I mean, and again, I know lots of parents do it and it's fine and it works for them. For me, I'm just like, that does not sit well with me. Right, I don't, and I'm just so reminded of being, even if the day was really hard and I wasn't like, I wish I had way the whole day. Right. There are days like that, let's be honest. But, especially if it's been a really good day, maybe, you've gone to the library, you had lunch out, you got some good lessons in, whatever. And then you're driving home with them and it's sort of like, I'm so glad that we've had this whole time, and it feels really good.
Yeah.
But it is, like you said, it's a sacrifice. It's a real change to everybody's life. And, you have to look at the glass half full because you can right. But I thought, thinking, just kind of wrapping it up, but is there a part that you would say of kind of your teacher identity that you feel like you hold on to tightly still, or that you haven't let go of completely? Or a part that you are looking to transform when it comes to like who you were as a teacher? And again, you're still sort of in the field.
Yeah, it's a little, I would say the part that's hard for me is, which I don't know if it's good or bad, is like the comparison / like a need to assess. I've gotten better, but it's like the need to like compare and make sure that like what we're doing still aligns with those standards, right? Like I haven't leaned into homeschooling completely as far as like, this is what I feel like we should be learning. I'm following this curriculum. Like I always have one eye on the standards. Okay. Or like even for my kids that I support, well, one of the kids that I support that's home based, that's the same age as them. I see the stuff that he comes home with, and I'm like, do my kids do that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we're good. Like we can do that. You know what? Because I don't know what it's just that part of me that I'm not ready to let go with, and needing I see the progress. I've seen the progress. I have like permanent products of, samples of things that they've done. I can talk to them. I watch them access, different books. And I know there's been progress, but for whatever reason, like the data, which also comes from like what I do it for work, but like, it's like that part I'm still really holding on to as a teacher, which is interesting because I didn't do a whole lot of really great data collection when I was a teacher because I felt like I was just constantly putting out fires. But I think it was so ingrained in me to just like, okay, what's their score? Like, what do they get on their benchmark? What do they get on their benchmark? How'd they do? MCAS. What do they score? Proficient, advanced, like needs improvement, like. I think that's a part that it was just so ingrained in me that I'm still like holding on to. Like that's what teachers do is they assess and and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a part that I'm holding on to. Yeah. What about you?
For me, I think it's still the like missing feeling kind of like an expert on anything. And I'm, somewhat of a pack rat when it comes to I can't help but like, I don't know, I keep going back to insects because we've been reading James and the Just Teach, and we were talking about how I used to do that in 3rd grade, but it's like I'll see things and I'll collect stuff for this unit I might do with them, and it's too much. It'd be great if I was doing it in a classroom because I would be using, but it's like, you're not gonna, why am I spending all this money on this thing? I mean, yes, it's cute, it's fun, it adds to the unit, sure, but I'm not doing this repeatedly. I don't need all of this stuff. Or sometimes like I'll laminate a bunch of things and I'm like, why did I laminate that? Again, if I was using it year after year after year, laminating would be worth it, but it's not. And so, but I have a hard time throwing away things like that I think could be useful in the future. It's hard for me not to create units where I put so much into that it would be almost better for a classroom, or a group of kids, and it would be one that you would reuse.
Right.
And which honestly, what I should do is give some of these things to that used curriculum somehow, that I make because
or like design it and then sell it or something.
I know. See, I'm so good at that first part. It's the selling and networking thing that is like not my jam. I wish I could and I know I'm sure there's people that do that, and if I could, afford to have them like on staff or something, because I like to create the units. I even like to make the manipulative stuff and collect things and whatever, but I don't love that other part of it.
I know.
But yeah, to me that's hard. I'll hold on to that. So yeah, that's
well, I think too, I'll do that too with some stuff. It's just like, should I throw this away, or like, but what if we need it for something? I don't want to need it, not have it. I'd rather have it, not need it. But then it gets to the point where then I get into a mindset of just like, okay, just throw it out. And inevitably I do need something. Or I'll be like, oh, I had that.
Mm-hmm. Right. I had that. Where'd it go? I thought of that.
Throw it out.
I thought of that with a game that I had that I tossed the other day, or not the other day, I was looking for it the other day.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I tossed that. Why did I toss that?
Yeah.
Or even things like I remember bringing home, I must have had hundreds of those base 10 blocks.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't need, especially because I love the Matthew C blocks, but I am finding that I need more of the ones.
Oh, the units.
And I'm like, oh, wait, I refuse to buy more. Like, you had so many that you threw out, and like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say for me that's a part, and that feeling of kind of like an expert, you know, like that is a beauty of learning alongside your kids. You know, they ask questions you don't know the answer to, you pick it up with them, you kind of find out. But there was an ease to teaching when you do know a lot about the topic or the subject, you know, because you've taught it multiple times, and so there's you
know how to like answer a question with a question, and
there's
help
just
them. Yeah, that part has definitely.
There's times I miss that.
And I'm just not as thoughtful of a questioner as I used to be, because I'm just like, okay, it's just our homeschool stuff is just, it's very cut and dry. It's like, okay, it's small group, explicit instruction. We do the little lesson. You know, and then we do some practice, and then that's it. We move on. Like the thought, and we did a whole episode on like reading comprehension,
critical thinking.
Yeah. Like, I have to be honest, like, I'm not the best at doing it anymore because it's like they've got it right. Like, and I don't need to spend so much time on. And like, you know, you used to have to like, I don't know if you used to have to do it, but in our lesson plans, we used to have to like put in like, what are some of the questions that you're gonna like ask to help guide learning or whatever. Like, I don't put that in my lesson plans. Like, I'm just like, hey, like this and like, it's very explicit. It's very explicit. It's very cut and dry. So I would say that's a skill in my repertoire that has definitely like decreased as far as like my ability to come up with some really thoughtful questions and because I'm just doing it on the fly. I'm just like, I don't know, like, what do you think?
I know, no, and and I'm like that too, especially with, you know, when it comes to topics we've never done. Like I said, how we're doing that artist thing. It's like I don't know a lot about a lot of these artists. Even the artists I think I do know a lot about. They're asking me questions. I'm like, I don't know. We have to go like, but either like, thankfully, I usually, you know, preemptively take out books. But I does find that answer in a book. But it's like, you know, if I had done Leonardo da Vinci for 3 years in a row, I probably would have some, you know, or even kind of coming off like, you know what you're talking about. Right. Which thankfully my kids still think I know a lot of things, but it's like, there's a lot that, you know, but I guess that also, that's a whole other school of thought, but that you're learning alongside your kids. And so they see you as a learner, which is also a very amazing thing. Right. So, you know, I think what we were hoping, you know, to close it out today, we really wanted to say that if, you know, you're feeling an ache for missing your classroom. So if you are, you know, a teacher that has left the field to homeschool and you're just really missing it, or if you are teaching and you've got kids and you're thinking this might be a step you want to make, that grief might come, most likely it will, but it doesn't mean that you've made a wrong choice. You know, it means that teaching mattered to you. You know, I think we loved teaching. I think there's a lot of things we would go back to if we could at times. I mean, there's a lot of things I loved about teaching, but, you know, you are who you are today, and you're doing what you're doing for your kids, like you said, and focusing on what you are doing for them, and giving them this opportunity. That
I think sometimes too, just to like add something that gives me a little bit of solace in those moments of like missing it, or again, it's a little bit different for me, but just I was like, okay, well, you know, this is my kids are I only have this much amount of time with my kid. You know, eventually, like they are going to be, you know, 18 and grown, and then we'll revisit. You know, I thought about like going back and like getting my PhD in behavior analysis, and it's like, okay, now is not the time for that. Like, let's put a pin in that. That's not to say that like it's never going to happen, but you know, wait, this is the path that you're on right now, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be, eventually this path is going to end. Eventually they are going to, you know, graduate or then those types of things, and move into the world and move into being an adult, and then the homeschooling journey sort of ends, and then that's the opportunity to maybe get back into some of this stuff. So like if you are having grief and you're really struggling with it, kind of maybe finding some comfort in like that this is your choice, you know, for now. And that doesn't mean that like, you know, you're never going to be able to go back and have like a fulfilling, successful career doing whatever it was that you were doing before. It just means this is more of a priority to you than
that's right.
Your whatever you were doing before.
Right. Yeah. And it feels when you have an infant, you feel like, it's never going to end. But it will end. And, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
I sometimes say like the saying of like, you didn't stop becoming a teacher, you changed your classroom.
Oh, that's a nice.
Which is another, my house is now my classroom. I don't have a separate space, but I've had to really readjust how I teach. But so anyway, give yourself to honor the grief if you're feeling it, or and looking forward to the future of what your life will look like. And it is a process, like lots of things. So so until next time, keep the lessons light and the moments meaningful. And thanks for escaping with us.